Hi, good evening. We thank everyone for joining us today. I'm Chantal Lowe, the Senior Director, Partner in Community Engagement at Include NYC. On behalf of Include, happy to have you all here. So I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping for today, just to kind of set the stage for tonight's town hall. Special education in New York City, progress, future initiatives, and parent perspectives. And so we have a Spanish interpretation available. So if you need to access Spanish interpretation, please click on interpretation in your webinar controls, click on Spanish to listen to the interpretation, and you can adjust the volume as you go. I would also say that it's helpful to mute the original audio so that you hear the Spanish clearer. Bienvenidos, gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. Para acceder a la interpretación en español, haga clic Interpretación en los controles de Zoom. Haga clic Spanish para escuchar la interpretación en un volumen más alto que el inglés. Y cuando haga clic, también tendrá la opción de eliminar el audio en inglés, si prefieres, y puedes tocar Mute Original Audio. If you need closed captioning for tonight's session, closed captioning is available in multiple languages for this session. To access closed captioning, please click on the Show Captions CC button in your Zoom webinar controls, located in the menu bar at the bottom of your screen. If you click on the up arrow to the right of Show Captions, you'll have the option to pop up your captions in the language of choice. Para leer los subtítulos. En esta sesión, los subtítulos están disponibles. Para acceder a los subtítulos, haga clic en el botón Show Captions de los controles del Zoom. Si hace clic en la flecha hacia arriba, situada en la derecha de Show Captions, tendrá la opción de hacer clic en el idioma que desea. So your sound and video will be off during this event. If you have a question for today's panelists, please use the Q&A box in your Zoom webinar controls. Su micrófono y video estarán apagados durante este evento. Si tiene preguntas para los panelistas, utilice el cuadro de preguntas y respuestas, Q&A, en los controles del Zoom. And now it's my pleasure to welcome Include NYC's Executive Director, Cheryelle Cruickshank.
Thank you, Chantal, and welcome. Good evening, everyone. We are excited to host this town hall on special education in New York City, progress, future initiatives, and parent perspectives. As you heard, my name is Cheryelle Cruickshank, and if you are not aware, Include NYC is a 42-year-old nonprofit organization that supports children from birth to the age of 26 with any disability, along with their parents and the professionals that support them. We provide resources and information so that families and students can make the best informed decisions so that they can be most successful as they go through the trajectory of special education. And we are excited to have as special guests and partners the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools, Chancellor Melissa Aviles-Ramos, and her distinguished staff as panelists to hear about and discuss the important topics as the school year has just begun. I'm going to introduce the panelists, read a few of the bios, and we will also share a link to the New York City leadership team for those who want to know more about the leadership team. So of course, first we have our esteemed Chancellor. Melissa Aviles-Ramos is the Chancellor of New York City Public Schools, and she has dedicated nearly 2 decades to the children, staff, and families of New York City Public Schools, serving in roles at every level of the system, including teacher, school teacher, district leader, and cabinet member. As Chancellor, she has continued to champion New York City Reads, New York City Solves, and Student Pathways, expanding these instructional priorities to reach tens of thousands more students. She also launched New York City Public School Cares, an initiative to address systemic inequities in schools. Chancellor Aviles-Ramos is a native New Yorker, a Latina, and a proud parent of a New York City Public School student. Welcome, Chancellor. We also have with us Deputy Chancellor Christina Foti. and she is the Chancellor of the Division of Inclusive and Accessible Learning at New York City Public Schools, overseeing special education and multilingual programs. She previously led initiatives impacting over 300,000 students and families as Chief of Special Education. She has expanded inclusive education programs, established sensory spaces, and launched transition and college access centers citywide. She holds degrees from Vassar College, CUNY, Hunter College, and is pursuing a doctorate at Columbia University Teachers College. I don't know where you get the energy from, DC Fody. Then we have Deputy Chancellor Christina Melendez, and she's the Deputy Chancellor of the Division of Family, Community, and Student Empowerment. She leads citywide strategies to strengthen connections between families, schools, and communities across New York City. A bilingual educator and experienced leader, she champions inclusive programs that elevate family voice and create equitable opportunities for students. With over 20 years in education, Christina is dedicated to empowering families as partners in learning and driving meaningful engagement through supports and student success. And if that was not enough, we have our distinguished panelists. We have the Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Pate, Chief of Dial, John Hammer, Chief of Special Education, Suzanne Sanchez, Chief of School Support in District 75, Andy Corso, Chief of Curriculum and Instruction, Cordelia Veve, Senior Executive Director of Specialized Instruction and Programs, Michelle Netzler, Senior Instructional Advisor for School Support and Leadership, Leneve Nash, Executive Director of Special Education and Policy, Kevin McGinn, Executive Director of Policy and Advocacy, David Mantell, Executive Director of Ridership, the Office of Pupil Transportation, Lanika Parker-Moore, and Executive Director of Communications, the Office of Pupil Transportation, Laquana Chambers. So we are excited to have all of you here with us this afternoon. I want to thank everyone who registered to be a part of this discussion, whether you're a parent, a professional, or a youth with a disability. We'll start the discussion with some remarks from our esteemed Chancellor, and then we will have the opportunity to ask a few questions on topics that we drew directly from concerns and questions that we've received from parents. We've shaped our questions for the New York City Public School panelists to ensure that the discussion reflects and responds what families really want to know. There will also be time for Q&A, and you can start putting your questions in the Q&A chat. So please, you can start doing that right now, and I will turn it over to the Chancellor to give her remarks.
Thank you so much, Cheryelle, and thank you, Chantel and Lori and the entire Include NYC team for having our team join everyone this evening to have these important and urgent conversations. Excited to be here. And I apologize, I am in my mobile office as I just finished an orientation for my own daughter's after-school program in New York City Public Schools, and now I am headed to one of our CEC meetings with our parents. So like all of you, always on the run, but it's for good cause. We just began our 25-26 school year, and it has been a fantastic time already. I was able to visit the brand new Rise Academy on Staten Island, and students were thriving in an absolutely beautiful new space purposely built for D75. I had a chance to observe students in these classes exploring art and design, and it was also inspiring to see the intentional partnership and collaboration between District 31 School and District 75 School co-located at the site. In fact, I heard directly from some of the teachers and the parents and hearing about how successful that collaboration has been. I know that there are a few topics really on everyone's minds as we began this school year, perhaps first and foremost being the new state law on cell phones in classes, or as you have often heard us say, internet-enabled devices. We are implementing this law across all of our schools, and each school has developed an individual policy and device storage method that best fits their community, whether that's pouches or lockers or the school actually collecting the devices. And now schools are sharing those policies with families. We need your input. We want to make sure that these plans meet the community needs and that they can be adjusted. And I want to be clear that engagement is ongoing. We are not just sharing the plan and saying engage now and then you won't hear from us again. Because this is a new state law, it is not new to New York City Public Schools. Over half of our schools were collecting or restricting internet-enabled devices for a very long time. But now that this is a law and it is system-wide, we need to make sure that we are keeping careful contact with all of you, so this engagement will be ongoing. We understand that this community may have concerns about how this affects students with IEPs, 504 plans, and English language learners. And please be assured that the law includes specific exceptions to address those needs. So to further support schools, DIAL and the Office of Student Health have developed updated guidance to help ensure that students' individual needs are met while a policy is upheld. As a fellow New York City public school parent, I understand the trust it takes to place your child in our care every single day, and know that every single school is required to have a direct phone number to ensure that while personal devices are secured, staff remain fully responsive to families. I want to emphasize while every school year brings new opportunities and change, we are also remaining consistent in our commitments and priorities. When I entered this role nearly a year ago, I kicked off with a 5-borough listening tour to hear over 1,000 New York City public school students, staff, and families. That tour led to the formation of 3 commitments, which I believe create the ecosystem for a thriving school community. Student safety, which is both physical and emotional, as we have zero tolerance for hate or bias in our schools. Educator support, ensuring our teachers have the resources and the training to succeed. And family empowerment, not just engaging families, but actually empowering them at the decision-making tables with us. And these commitments lay the groundwork for our priorities, such as New York City Reads and Solves, ensuring we ground our instruction in strategies that work. New York City Reads and Solves are expanding to 186 middle schools this year, and we want to ensure our students with disabilities are fully supported in this transformation. So we are strengthening instructional planning and interventions to ensure all students have access to inclusive and accessible learning. And we have student pathways, ensuring every student is prepared for a bold future, with our Future Ready NYC program going up to 50 more schools. And NYCPS Cares, our newest edition, one that really embodies these 3 commitments. We are launching student-led anti-bullying and anti-vaping campaigns and training over 1,000 family connectors, and we'll have more to come soon on this initiative. So in closing, I just want to reiterate that I am honored to be in this space with all of you and excited to serve to open the 25-26 school year. Please know we are all here in service of all of you. We're eager to hear your questions and input on issues that are most important to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, for starting us out. So we'll jump right in since you started about cell phones, the cell phone ban. A couple of questions. You mentioned that there are updated guidance around the cell phone and electronics ban. Where can parents find that updated information?
Absolutely. So we have information on our website, schools.nyc.gov. You should also know that when it comes to the exceptions to the policy, that includes medical needs like diabetes monitoring. If required by a student's IEP or 504 plan, and the school has not yet secured an NYCPS device for the purpose. for language translation services if there's no other option available. This also includes if a student is responsible for the care of a family member, in emergency situations where parents have notified school leadership of a specific nature. These are all reasons that could move towards getting an exception for a student. And so there's information on our website, but also I encourage you to speak to your school community so that way, if an exception is needed, you're working directly with them to secure that.
Okay, great. And since the school year has started, have you gotten feedback from parents of students with disabilities? And if so, what kind of feedback are you getting?
We are staying in close contact with our principals, and we have heard that there are some cases where exceptions are needed. And so this is why we carefully outline the ways in which an exception can be secured for a student. We are making sure that principals are having those conversations with families. We released a letter that clearly stated what the disciplinary action would be in the event that students are just not willing to part with their phones. We know there's a little bit of a detox here, but we want to make sure that students are not suspended as a result of that. It was clear in the law that that's not an option. And to further communicate on this issue, Chief Rampersant and I just recorded a video with some of our students that delves into the policy and what that looks like on the ground.
Oh, that's nice. And is that video on the website as well?
It will be released very shortly.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, it sounds like you all have all your bases covered. So communication sounds like the key to making this a success for all our students and our parents. So let's switch gears a little. As I mentioned, that we get a lot of calls and concerns around IDA and federal changes that are coming down, and obviously concerns around the role of the U.S. Department of Education and how that will affect the education of our students with disabilities, and how will civil rights be enforced, and holding schools accountable for delivering related services, and like speech and OT, which are very important. So what do you say to parents who are concerned about their child no longer receiving the special education services that they need?
So any of the recent changes to USDOE or its reorganization, they are not impacting New York City Public School special education services. We remain committed to providing these services. As a matter of fact, we have made some big investments in special education, and we work hard to make sure that we are expanding more inclusive programs and also expanding programming in District 75. These are things that are very important to Christina Foti, to myself, to the entire team. We've also made a lot of those. We've made a lot of those changes and investments in our early childhood division to support our youngest learners who also have IEPs. So please know that we remain committed to that. Even with threats of withholding funding and delayed payments, our schools have not felt the effects of this because this administration has put more money into schools than previous administrations. And so, these critical resources remain in place. And we not only are committed to continuing, but also expanding.
That sounds great. So you mentioned about funding. Um, if federal funding gets cut or changed and is not flowing the same way, does the city have a plan to cover shortfalls for funding?
Mhm. So we continue to monitor any of the information that comes out regarding federal funding. We understand that they provide critical resources to our schools and students. And all we can do is continue to monitor the actions taken by the federal government. But as I said, we're happy to report that even with the threats of withholding funds and delayed payments, our schools continue to thrive. They have not felt the effects of this, and we're committed to providing the necessary resources to everyone in our school communities.
Okay. And you mentioned about one of the important areas that you focus on is safety. And there are parents that are concerned that with the department, the Office for Civil Rights, that enforces IDAs, Section 504. Without that, there is the concern of discrimination for children with with disabilities. What do you say to parents around protecting students against discriminatory practices that could result from not having the Office for Civil Rights?
Again, here in New York State, we oversee, we have jurisdiction over our schools. So again, our Attorney General, we have our regulator, this New York State Education Department. And so we remain committed to making sure that we are providing the necessary services and support. We believe that every child in New York City should be welcomed, should be supported, should be loved, and should be valued. So regardless of what is happening at the federal level, that is how we stand here in New York City. And our partners at the state level are supportive of that stance as well.
I love that. That's great for parents to hear, to know that their children are being kept safe. So let's pivot a little, and I know that you're going to include some of your team in some of um, the following questions. So you can I'll ask the question and you can direct it to whoever needs to answer it if that works for you. So we wanted to talk a bit about equity and access and thinking about students with disabilities and being in segregated and self-contained classrooms in most cases, and not having the opportunity to be with the general population in a least restrictive environment, knowing that we have over 60,000 students in special education services. How do you support parents that believe that their child would educationally benefit from a less restrictive environment and for a classroom setting?
Such a great question. And before I pass it over to Deputy Chancellor Foti, I simply want to say that this is why we are expanding more inclusive programming. And this is why we are listening to the community on their needs for specific programming. We're not just making these decisions by ourselves. We are talking to advocates. We're talking to organizations. We are talking to parents. And wherever there is need, we are deeply committed to expanding. That does cost money. And so obviously, if we had unlimited funding streams, we would love to stand up even more programs. But I'm very proud of the work that we have done and the fact that Christina has been really championing this work in a while, and that we were able to come up with a strategic way of expanding to give parents more access. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to Deputy Chancellor Foti.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, and thank you, Cheryelle, and all. Honor to be with you tonight, as always. Well, a few ways. I mean, the first thing I want to start with is when we designed New York City Reads and Solves, this is, I would argue, the first time this level of curriculum overhaul has happened that has included students with disabilities and multilingual learners from the start. And our chancellor is to thank for that. We have always learned that when we do initiatives and then retrofit them to meet the needs of students with disabilities, that it never works. And so while we're really, really excited to see the gains on our math and ELA scores, something that the chancellor has been driving home is that there's still that big gap where our students with disabilities are not scoring commensurate to their peers without disabilities. That said, we are also seeing the places where this is working, and we want our families to be aware of what is working, how it's working, why it's working. One of the most profound visits I've done recently is to a District 75 school that is using the HMH curriculum, which is one of the New York City Reads approved curricula, evidence-based, and a fourth grader that is non-speaking, that uses assistive technology to communicate as her voice, was communicating using on grade level text, reading, spelling, writing, on grade level. And it's the perfect example of high expectations coupled with individualized supports. And so we want our families to know that they should continue to press on high expectations in inclusive environments, and there are many ways that they could do that. Number one, that starts with advocacy at the school level. We have designed our teaching and learning in this year and last year to meet the needs of all learners for the first time. And that means that all learners should be in those schools and those classrooms. We have in districts like District 12, more of our kindergarten classes coming in their geographic district, remaining in their geographic district, not going to District 75 than we ever have before. And that's because we built practices that are serving kids well. And so when we do that work, parents do not have to work so hard to fight for inclusivity. And that's really our goal. And so we're going to drop a bunch of links of resources for families that they can use when having conversations with their IEP teams, with their schools. But really, this work is much more on us as the educators to build schools and classrooms that create inclusive practices as the norm. And so we have many resources that we brought today. We're happy to continue to talk about them, and we're gonna drop that all in the chat. And of course, if there are questions, we'll answer them in the live Q&A.
Okay, that's great. And thank you for giving some examples of ways that you are working towards making this a more inclusive opportunity and experience for students with disabilities. As you continue to track the progress that New York City Reads and New York City Solves is making, sometimes when we hear about it more in a very global sense, and it's really difficult to pick out how a students with disabilities doing. Is there a way that that information can be reported so that parents that are supporting students with disabilities understand where their child the trajectory is going in terms of New York City Reads and New York City Solves and progress?
Yes.
Yes.
Cheryelle.
100%. Before I pass it, so Suzanne is going to take it away. The rest of the team is. I truly apologize. I have to jump, but you're in the best hands. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity, and we look forward to reviewing all of the feedback based on this dialogue, so that way we can strengthen our partnerships with parents and inclusion for all students. So thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you for your time, Chancellor.
Thanks. Good evening.
Thank you, Chancellor, and thank you for that really important question, Cheryelle, and the rest of the Include NYC family here. And the question is right on time. Deputy Chancellor Foti mentioned this is the first time around such consistent and cohesive curriculum across New York City public schools. And I am really, really honored to work side by side with my colleagues in the Division of School Leadership. And so we are in partnership, in true partnership in this work. And families are going to be receiving family guides and family communications around supporting their child in all aspects of New York City Reads and Solves. What should a parent expect? What happens in a school when a child is not yet reading proficiently on grade level? What can parents do and how can they support? There are already some really robust resources on the New York City Public Schools family-facing website, and families are going to be receiving more, as you mentioned, specific granular information specific to their child and specific to New York City Reads and Solves overall. So really excited about this partnership with our colleagues in the Division of School Leadership, and cannot really echo Deputy Chancellor Foti's. We can't overstate the importance of not retrofitting initiatives, services, supports for students with disabilities. And it is wonderful to be before you all and say that students with disabilities have been front and center in the development and the rollout of this work, and will continue to be so.
That is awesome, because that was going to be my next question, as parent engagement is so important, and supporting parents to be able to support their children with this new curriculum is even more important, so that you have the flow across all aspects. So thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about student safety and absenteeism in particular. Students with disabilities, they have chronic absenteeism rates, and it's something that will probably be exacerbated by things that are happening in the federal government around us. So with the federal government ramping up around immigration enforcement, will there be new procedures around school refusal or students with high absenteeism rates, so that we can try to bring that gap down? And what steps are you taking to address that?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, and it is great to be here in community with all of you. You know, our schools continue to be the safest spaces for our students. Because of this, we have not made any changes to the expectations of around attendance. We want families to really know and understand and believe us when we say that non-local law enforcement are not permitted access to our schools or our students without the proper documentation, whether it's a judicial warrant, a subpoena, an emergency circumstance. And our school leaders have a direct line to our legal team on the field in case there is such an arrival of non-local law enforcement with some sort of documentation. We are not leaving our school leaders to decide whether this is appropriate or not. We have a team that's ready and quick to respond to those needs. And so we are not changing our process, and we want to continue to reinforce to all of our families that our students are safe in our schools, and we work really hard to ensure that.
That's a great message. Can you share, how does that message get out to parents? How do parents understand the seriousness that you're taking this, the steps that you're taking, and to feel safe? How do they get that information?
Yeah, we make sure that everyone on the field, every one of our school leaders, from our superintendents to our principals, have not only engaged in understanding what they have access to, but also have learned know your rights and know their rights, or have engaged in those trainings over the last year. And we will continue to offer those. We are also offering those to families. And so platforms like this one, where we get to reiterate it, we do this in every single moment that we can, whether it's a parent leader meeting or a wonderful opportunity like this one. We continue to reiterate these conversations. We empower our school leaders and teachers to know how to have these conversations with our families as well.
Okay. And just overall, just in terms of the high absenteeism rates for students with disabilities, especially in District 75, what are some of the reasons that you've found are causing this, and what's been done to help to try and address that?
Thank
No,
you so
making
much.
sure, yeah. Perfect. I was just going to say, Andy's going to take it from here. She's got more specifics on D75. So thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chancellor Melendez. And thank you all. This is such an important question. And we take attendance very seriously, especially in District 75. A couple key things that we know is that attendance is very personal. And so when the team finds out why a student is not attending, then they can address those causes for the student and family. What have we already done? In 2023, District 75 hired a designated attendance director to really hold the data and do some capacity building. The district leadership team has focused on and prioritized students based on the data to identify those root causes for chronic absence. I also just want to share District 75 invests in school-based attendance teams, including consistent professional development and strategies for teams. Last thing I really want to note here, and this is important, District 75 attendance teachers meet regularly and are also encouraged to do home visits for absent students. So we want to learn the reasons for each student and family that the absenteeism is occurring, and then take steps to address those reasons.
Okay, that's great. That's really good to know. It is something that's important and a huge concern for parents for
Absolutely.
a variety of different reasons. And them being to be able to understand that, I think it's really important. It's about the communication and getting that information out there, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Thank you.
have you received concerns from parents who are, for whatever reason, their child is having absenteeism issues, is there a mechanism that they can come in and talk to someone and try to help navigate through those problems?
Absolutely. And just like with any time a parent is concerned, the very first step is the school, and especially the parent coordinator at the school. That's the very first step, but that's not the only resource. So we want to start as close to the student as possible, which is the school. And then let's say the school says, you know what, I'm not sure I have the answer or the support here. That's when then you reach out to the district team and even the central team to provide resources. We work closely cross-divisionally with Deputy Chancellor Melendez's team, who works with amazing community organizations and families, and also with Chief Mark Rampersant, who leads a lot of work around youth development and student safety. So when we get a situation where the school is feeling stuck and the family is feeling stuck, then we want those cases to come up so that we can bring all of the resources together to support that student and family.
Okay, excellent. Can we go back to New York City Reads and New York City Solves and talk a bit about how are the teachers being prepared for this using this curriculum with students with disabilities in District 75?
I'm happy to address that. We've had great success in District 75. Deputy Chancellor Foti mentioned this as well. All District 75 schools are using HMH into reading. And how is that possible? How are we having our students with the most intense support needs accessing grade level content in all of our District 75 schools? What we did was partner closely with the UFT and develop a pacing and support guide so that those students have a pathway and the teachers and peers know what they can do to support students to access grade level reading. And I want to note here, I had a chance to see HMH in action in many of our District 75 schools. What we know deeply is that when we believe in our students, they soar. And it's exciting to see evidence day after day that students with the right supports are able to access grade level content and are able to thrive.
That's great.
Do you
That's
mind
great.
if I just add in also, because I
Okay.
think that the Dial team has done such a great work of also expanding specialized programs into our community school districts. And so in addition to the specialized work that they do with D75, we also have a number of community school districts that have Horizons programs that are using our core curriculum. And we see because we have a direct partnership in the training that teachers get between Dial and DSL and teaching and learning, those teachers are getting both the core curriculum and also thinking about what are the adaptations that they need to make for students that they have in front of them.
Oh, that's awesome. Are these adaptations, and is this kind of information shared with the families?
So again, just as Chief Corso said, that's first at a school level, what those
Okay.
adaptations would be, because we want those to be responsive to the specific students who are in those classes. And those are decisions that really teachers have to make at the school level. They get training on what those adaptations could be, and then they need to apply them to the students that are in front of them.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. Before we jump into the Q&A, we have maybe 3-4 minutes left. Are there any other initiatives, future initiatives that you would like to share with the audience before we get into the questions?
Yeah, Cherylle, there is definitely one more for sure that we wanted to share here, which is goes back a bit to what you had. Well, sorry about that noise here. What you had referenced about students and families potentially seeking less restrictive settings and going to school closer to home. And so this year, we have launched an initiative called Inclusion Innovators, where we will be supporting 6 school districts and with a core set of schools in each district on creating inclusive school environments. And what's unique about this partnership with those 6 superintendents and their teams is that the special education team will be providing on-site coaching and working side by side with school leaders and district leaders to build capacity at the school level, with the end goal of empowering teachers to know that they can welcome all learners and that all learners can thrive in their setting. So we're going to be providing on-site training on behavior intervention supports, all components around autism and communication, assistive technology, how to utilize sensory regulation strategies in the classroom, and also empowering families with some information. So we're really excited about this initiative, whose focus is in partnership with school teams to build capacity at the local level. And we are looking forward to checking in with you later in the school year to let you know how that's going and the progress we're seeing. But we're certainly really excited about that partnership. And the
That
goal,
does sound
yeah,
exciting.
we're going to create more inclusive spaces. And what's exciting is, you mentioned our specialized programs, and Chief Eve mentioned our specialized programs. We're taking the tenets of those programs, right? We know what works. We've seen what works. And then we are empowering schools to use those tenets within their kindergarten, first and second grade classes. So more to come on that, but a very exciting capacity building initiative.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Anything else before we get into the questions? We've gotten several from our audience, so really want to share them. Anybody else? Nope, then we will get started with our Q&A. So our first question is, what can teachers do or expect from their administration to help families who are having a hard time getting their children back to school?
Happy to speak to that, and I'm just so grateful to the question. I think one of the things that we've learned is that the root causes for students who are struggling with attendance are varied. One thing that I do recommend is connecting with the IEP team for a student with a disability who's struggling with attendance, bringing together those stakeholders and really thinking about what are the supports the student might need and the family might need that they don't have right now. I want to be clear that the attendance may have nothing to do with the student's disability. So I also just want to acknowledge that. And that's where the parent coordinator, and certainly resources at the district and the central office may be the most appropriate.
Okay, thank you for that. Because I know that sometimes getting back into the swing of going to school can be difficult for some children, whether they have a disability or not, to be honest. Yes, so that is true. So our next question is, given how sets can be one-to-one or a group of up to 8, and even can be mandated to 2, 3, up to 7 students, why wouldn't a school get more funding when they have a student who has sets as a one-to-one service? Wouldn't that discourage schools from ever mandating a very small group of sets, including 11? Or this might lead for students having to go to private school, but having one-to-one sets can potentially prevent that move. Can this formula be changed?
For asking. And one of the key points I wanna lift up here is certainly we always take community input on the fair student funding formula. That's something that we do, and I see a lot of input here in the chat. So happy to support that. I also want to just reemphasize, and this is something that I say frequently, if a school is saying, I can't provide a service because I don't have enough money, then they need to contact the administrator of special education at the district office. There is a process for schools to get additional funds to be able to support. So we should not be looking at the lack of funding being something that ever determines a student not getting the services that they need. And the key point of contact there, the first point of contact, is the administrator of special education, and there's one in every district.
Oh, okay, great, great. That's good to know. Um, so are students with disabilities that are enrolled in charter schools, do they have access to New York City Reads and New York City Solves curriculums?
So Cheryl, the students in charter schools the charter school is still responsible for choosing their curriculum. And some of the charter schools are certainly there's overlap in terms of they've selected the same evidence-based curricula that we have.
Oh,
But really it is charters have the autonomy to select for themselves.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. Good to know. So why is there a cap on funding special education teacher services? If a student needs more services, the school should get the funding to do so, not just a minimum ICT funding. What's your response to that?
Yeah, the IEP drives the funding. And so if a child needs more services, and that's outlined on the IEP, that should drive the funding. There is a process that by which schools flag the need for potentially a different additional funding. It's called the core process, which is internal to districts and central, but there certainly is a process by which schools can let central offices and districts offices know if there's additional funding needed via IEP-driven supports.
Okay. So there's a comment that some schools keep the phones locked even during lunchtime. And this seems unsafe when kids are walking around the city for all kids with or without IEPs or medical needs. In the school, I fully support no phones. There are plenty of adults with cell phones and landlines, but when it comes to at lunchtime, the phones should be unlocked. Can there be consideration for a change across the board in terms of allowing children to have their phones during lunchtime?
Hi, Cheryelle, thank you for that question from the Q&A in the chat as well. So as it stands now, the cell phone ban is a bell to bell, which means from the start of the school day to the very end of the school day. But I really want to echo what our chancellor said, is that engagement on this is ongoing, and that schools want to hear from families about things exactly just like that, and that she is genuinely seeking, right, community and family engagement on this topic. And so I encourage folks to share that. And I would ask my colleague David Mantell if he had anything he would like to add on that.
Yeah, I think, this is an issue where schools they have parameters that they have to meet within the law, within the chancellor's regulation, but we recognize that there are differences between different schools in terms of size, in terms of student population, things like that. So, schools have some ability in that sense to adapt their policy. And as, Suzanne mentioned, folks should certainly be in contact and providing kind of their feedback on what works and what doesn't.
Thank you for that. Suzanne, you had mentioned that there are 6 districts that are included in the Inclusive Innovators program.
Yes.
Can you let us know what those districts are?
Sure, I can tell you right now, and then we can drop them in the chat as well.
Perfect.
So District 1, District 9, District 19, 22, 24, and District 28.
And just as a follow-up question to that, how do you see or envision inclusive innovators within District 75 for our students with disabilities? Or is that a consideration at this point?
Such a great question, and I will invite my colleague Andy as well in on this. This is a benefit of the Division of Inclusive and Accessible Learning, and all being in one house, so to speak. So we share best practices across both. While the Inclusion Innovator Program right now is specific to community schools, we are taking lessons learned from within our district, from our District 75 schools, and sharing that. And as a matter of fact, Cheryelle, many of our schools participating in Inclusion Innovators are going to be doing intervisitations into District 75 schools and sharing practices along the way. And whatever we learn and change and evolve to with our Inclusion Innovators, Andy is going to be lockstep with that within the District 75 schools. But Andy, what would you like to add there?
Thank you, Suzanne. And I just really appreciate the question because we're one system. And very often we think about us in separate buckets. But one of the things that we really believe is that when more of our community schools learn the skills to be inclusive, more students' needs will be able to be met in community school close to home. And I just want to be very clear. District 75 serves a vital function, and there will always be students for whom District 75 is the absolute right placement, and we welcome them and are so glad to have them in District 75. And there are students whose needs in District 75 right now, whose needs could be served closer to home in community school if the teachers and staff had more of the skills that are going to be developed in inclusion innovators. So it's deeply connected. We are one system, even though sometimes we speak about ourselves in different ways.
I love that, especially for parents, and their children are in high need, they're living in high need neighborhoods and concerned that their schools are not equally valued as other schools. What do you say to that?
Firstly, I would say that not only were the inclusion innovators selected strategically, District 9, 19, 22, 24, and 28, and parts of District 1 tend to have high needs neighborhoods there. And the individual schools within those districts are schools that will benefit from this type of support as determined by their superintendents and some principals as well. And so the goal around this work is to exactly what Andy said, so that students who may have more intensive needs than a community school may be comfortable or may have experience in supporting will be resourced to do that. Resource from a knowledge perspective, and have comfortability that these students can not only be welcomed but can thrive in these school settings. So that's the goal, and we are excited to jump into this.
That's great. Can you give a little more definition around specialized designed instruction? What does that really mean?
Yes, and I see my colleague Lenive in Ash, who is really eager to jump into this. And specially designed instruction is a way to take curriculum and ensure that it is individualized and that the programming is specific for that student. But I'm going to turn this over to the true master of this, who is Lenive Nash.
Good evening, families, and thank you for that question. Specially designed instruction is the bedrock of what special education teachers and related service providers do in service of students. It's the adaptation of what the curriculum presents in a way that allows students to access it. And it may include special techniques like breaking down content into digestible chunks for students or using different methodologies to ensure that the information that's presented to students is done so in a way that they can access it. Our teachers continue to receive additional training in this year over year, and the proof is in the data. We know that when instruction is delivered in a way that's specialized, it's going to help students mitigate the effects of their disabilities. It's going to help them to access the same grade level content as their peers. And it continues to be used in ICT classes, special ed classes, to ensure that students are able to make progress.
Thank you for that
Lenive,
explanation.
would you like to touch on the CFITs and their role around this process here?
Absolutely. So in addition to our classroom teachers and related service providers, we have trained a team of specialists, interventionists across the system who have been supporting students in the area of reading. Those are centrally funded intervention teachers. I-read specialists and other interventionists. They've been trained in the science of reading. They're also using the approved intervention programs throughout the city to help students better master the fundamentals of reading. And we've noticed that in this past year alone, they've been able to lift the reading levels of over 13,000 students with
Wow,
disabilities more than 2 grade levels. So we
that's
have
awesome.
evidence that it's working. And so we continue to expand these practices. We want to deepen what teachers can do in the area of specially designed instruction and to ensure that many more students who need interventions can get it from trained staff. More to come on that.
Oh, that sounds really good. That's a great improvement. I'm glad to hear that and hope that that continues to extend. Um, there are parents that we've gotten a few comments around parents who have specific concerns and they've reached out to like their school social worker or various staff members, and they're not getting a response back. How long should we tell parents that they should wait before they escalate it, and how do they escalate it so they actually get a response?
Thank you for that question. And no, there's no need to wait, right? If a parent has a concern about their child, there is no need to wait. And if they are not getting satisfactory responses or timely responses, families can next step reach out to their superintendent's team. And I actually dropped a link to all of our city superintendents in the chat earlier. And if it's helpful, we can repost that in the chat for support at the school level. And families can always reach out directly to the special education inbox that we monitor hourly and certainly day to day, but more frequently than that. So we don't want parents waiting. We want them to reach out and share whatever concerns they have, and especially if they're not hearing timely response or receiving that from their school level. So superintendent team is the next step, and or always the special education inbox is available to families.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Is there information on the HMH model available on the New York City public school website? And if so, where?
So there's a lot of rich information on the website, and I will hand this over to Chief Eve to share a little bit more from her perspective about what is on the website and where.
And can you also just, for those who may not know, explain what the HMH model is? Thank you.
Sure. So HMH is less a model than a specific curriculum that some schools have selected. And I think we should keep in mind for New York City Reads, there are 3 different curricula that schools had the option to choose from. Schools had the option to choose from HMH, EL, and Wit and Wisdom. And so depending on where your child is enrolled, which district they are in, that district has selected one of those curricula. And you can find an overview of those curricula, but really to learn more about the curricula, as we've said, we've been building capacity with both the districts and the schools to be able to talk about the implementation of those curricula. And often what we see is superintendents are leading for their CECs and for their family engagement events, talking about what this curricula looks like in an action. And then at the school level for principals leading meetings to talk about what does that curricula look like in action. And so it's really dependent on how those schools and those districts choose to engage with the families about that.
Thank you for that. Well, this time has flown by and we have had an amazing, rich discussion. So I really want to thank all of you, all the panelists, the Chancellor, for taking the time this evening to really talk with our families and answer questions. We really appreciate it. And we're really excited to have been able to have this conversation with all of you and to continue the partnership between Include NYC and New York City Public Schools as we try to ensure that our families get the best information they can for all that they need. At this time, we have about 2 minutes left, and we are going to have an exit poll that'll be available at the end of the session. So people, please stay on to take the exit poll. I also want to remind people that you can always call Include NYC's helpline, and we are here to help you navigate through difficult situations. And we want to thank all of our panelists for this night and just for your partnership and really being so open and willing to continue to improve the lives of students with disabilities. We have about 1 minute left. DC Fody, do you have any final comments?
Thank you, Cheryl. We just wanted to hop in and say thank you so much for having us. Include has been such a longtime partner of ours, and that partnership extends from direct parent supports and outreach to professional development to reviewing each other's materials so that we can make sure that we are providing the best of the best. And so you all are a definition of true partnership to us. As you know, it's always really important to us that we get back to every question that is asked. And so, Cheryl, we will be working with your team to make sure that every question in the chat receives a written response. For the families that have reached out with child-specific concerns, I wrote back to them and told them how to reach out to us tomorrow. We will be in touch with them. And then for all of the other questions, we will send you written responses so that you can share with your community.
Thank you so much. That is really important because we do want people to feel like they are heard and that they are important in every aspect of their child's journey, and that we respect the fact that they've taken the time to come, and that we want to make sure we get back to them. So we really appreciate that, DC Fody. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, our fun time has come to an end. It is 7 o'clock. So thank you everyone for your participation. Thank you for everyone that logged in to be a part of this discussion. And thank you so much to New York City Public Schools. And I have to thank all my staff at Include NYC that helped to coordinate this with New York City Public Schools and to make this night go as smoothly as possible. So everyone, I will say good night, and don't hang up so you could do the exit poll.
And just a quick note, if anyone is joining via smartphone or tablet, you might have to scroll over to the right or left to see the poll.